I have a fab panel with me. Really pleased because I know a few people on this panel. I don't know everybody. And as I said in the beginning, we've just had Netflix, first time at this event. Now we have Phil, also first time at this event, I believe, as a speaker. Let me quickly run through, introduction for us, and I want to make sure I get the titles right. So Philip Miles is MD, Video and Display Sales at YouTube in the UK. We've got Natalie Bell, who's the Chief Executive Officer at MGOMD. Evelyn Rothblum, who is EVP Advertising, Partnerships and Distribution, Italy and Germany at Sky. And Kelly Williams, who's Commercial Director for ITV, Managing Director of Commercials, I think is your title, but everybody knows Kelly. So we just witnessed a moment of history. Netflix, first time on this show. I wanted to take a few moments, as this panel is effectively called TV Serendipity moment. So are we, what I wanted to sort of take us through is this pendulum of TV and what we've gone through in the last few years. And Kelly, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you because, of course, Netflix has just arrived in the UK. And we've just heard Jeremy speak about sort of the what they're doing here. Where do you see the line between what we've commonly called BVOD, AVOD, and what's come on the market for Netflix? Is it more the same? Is it something vastly different?
Well, look, I think Netflix is television. I think they make professionally produced long-form content. So I think they are absolutely part of the TV ecosystem. They've been around for a while. They've competed with us for audience for a number of years. From an ITV perspective, they've been a big customer. We make quite a lot of content, specifically for Netflix, so they're a great partner to work with. But they're now moving into advertising, so they will be a competitor of ours. And look, we'll compete with them. We have to compete them. And I think as a mainstream commercial broadcaster, we're in a great place to compete with them. We have a very big linear business. We have this mass reach proposition combined with a really fast-growing, addressable proposition. And I guess we have a creative proposition. Being an integrated producer broadcaster, we make most of our shows so we can integrate brands into our content. So I think the combination of that puts us in a great position to compete with them. But I think it also raises the issue of regulation in this country. I think what we do as public service broadcasters or UK public service broadcasters is try and shape and reflect British culture and British television. From a news perspective, we are again producing impartial, independent news, which effectively underpins our democracy. And I think it's important that we protect that in this country. So I think regulation will be very important. I think the media bill that's currently going through Parliament, particularly around prominence, as a public service broadcaster, we get the right of prominence on an EPG, but don't necessarily get the right of prominence in the streaming world. And I think that's going to be a very important piece of regulation.
And I'll come back to you on one specific question, which I heard in the previous panel around sort of ad sales and organization on the Netflix front. But Evelyn, Netflix obviously a very large partner of Sky, no need to mention. Frenemies, co-opetition, there's a lot of relationship there with Sky before, ad sales. Tell us a little bit more how it was approached within Sky.
So I think, look, similar to what Kelly said, Netflix is a great partner for us. We integrate Netflix, but also Disney Plus and many other partners and platforms into our platforms and offer them to our consumers in our aggregation proposition because really, we want to integrate their content and help consumers find the content that they love. And that's what Sky is all about. When it comes to advertising, it's obviously great to see that new players are entering the market and offering advertising, along with their content. But I think a key thing to remember there is that it's going to take a while for some of those platforms to reach, the same reach that some of the existing players like Sky have in the markets today, especially obviously in the UK market, but also in other markets like Italy and Germany.
Yeah. I'll ask you a question at the end, Natalie, but I'll go to Phil. Talk about scale. Tiny player, YouTube. I'm just teasing you. Obviously, you've done very well building audiences. When we talk about TV, and I've been guilty of this on this stage, you know, I wouldn't say make fun of Google because that wouldn't be me, but generally speaking, sort of saying how you know, YouTube needed to sort of adapt to the codes of TV. I think, you know, you've done that relatively well. What do you think is the next, you know, does Google and YouTube in particular fit into this new definition of what is TV today? I mean, we've just heard from Netflix. Tell us your...
Well, I mean, look, firstly, thank you for having me today. I think it's important that YouTube's part of these conversations and part of these industry debates. I think it's, you know, good to be here. You know, I think, you know, we can spend a lot of time trying to determine and define exactly what is television in 2022 going into 2023. I think that what I tend to focus on is the consumer, and, you know, I don't think they're really focused on those definitions. You know, if I think about YouTube as an example, we're seeing now in the UK, you know, up to 30 million people a month come and watch YouTube on a television. I was interested in some ThinkBots research I saw a week ago that said that, you know, BVOD, you know, sort of traditional BVOD in the UK is, you know, nearly 40% of it is actually being viewed off TV. So I think that consumers are fundamentally sort of cross-device, cross-platform. What they really care about is watching the content where they want to watch it. And we're also seeing, of course, you know, interesting partnerships emerging with, you know, broadcasters themselves who are seeing YouTube as a distribution platform, both here in the UK and around the world. So I think you can't define television in its traditional sense anymore. I think, you know, I tend to use the term AV, but we've definitely moved into a new phase where we have to, I think, as an industry, you know, think a bit more about these converging worlds of digital and sort of linear. And in fact, that's effectively everybody on this panel is dealing with that challenge. And Natalie's hard job is to try and make sense of it for advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question. Thanks for teeing me up, Phil. There. Obviously, you know, you've been buying TV for a while. You have all these new screens. We've heard a new term, SAVOD, before. I think that's interesting as well. What do you make, and what do your clients tell you when you know, effectively go through this new dynamic in this new ecosystem? What are the challenges, and what are people telling you they want?
Well, first of all, I sat through a 3-hour presentation yesterday on a client's AV strategy for next year. And 3 hours, and media agencies love a slide, so many slides later, it's bloody complex, isn't it? It's really complex. I'm sitting between two people here where we were talking earlier. I can buy football highlights on YouTube through Sky. It's very, very complicated. And I think the important thing is we were talking about total video and AV actually, which we talk about a lot. You have to understand the differences within that. I think there's a danger we pull anything that's video down to the lowest common denominator, which is reach and audiences. There is still a difference between TV and certain types of video. And by TV, I mean premium content on the TV, 9 out of 10 homes, 4 hours a day, and the content that's consumed there and the receptivity to advertising as part of that, versus when you're targeting audiences on other platforms or other screens, which are just as valuable, but they shouldn't be treated the same. So yeah, it's not mine personally, but my team's job to make sense of all of that in a very complicated world, but you've got to stick to the principles of, from a planning perspective, who are the audience, what mindset are they in, what do you want them to do, how receptive are they? I know you're talking, I think today or tomorrow, about attention and the importance of that metric. And then how do we buy that, and what trading, through what activation platform, who's doing that? We doing that, the media owner doing it, and then importantly, and you've got a lot of this later as well, how are we measuring that cross-platform bit? Yeah, so it's not easy.
No, we'll talk about measurement. Sort of, I don't want to, you know, this is always a hit or miss at a conference when you talk about measurement. You know, either, you know, two people get excited and everybody gets bored. But sorry, Justin, are you there? Kelly, back on sort of selling, right? So we heard Jeremy and her 7-people team. And the agreement with Xander. I had to plug that in, just still very raw. Do you know, Disney Plus is coming in. with slightly different approach, I don't think it's a secret to say, where do you think sort of the largest or the top broadcasters in each of the market where these new entrants are coming in, what do you think the role is to try and use what you've built over the years to help or compete, of course, but just generally speaking, make sense of these new entrants in the market?
Well, look, I think what we're trying to focus on is building our addressable future. So we're actually just launching on Thursday, formally launching ITVX on Thursday, which is a big investment for ITV. It's moving from a catch-up service to a genuine, fully funded streaming service, ad-funded streaming service, and we've specifically gone at AVOD-led because I think that's what we're good at, the advertising piece. And we're trying to build an ecosystem. So we're trying to build a very big audience, streaming-wise, and it's incremental investment, so we're not diluting what we do on linear. So we're trying to build reach and audience from a streaming perspective. We're trying to build, or we've built a platform in Planet V, a programmatic platform specifically for TV that we own and control so that we understand how many cents in the dollar is getting to us. So we're not seeing that kind of ad tax come out of our value chain. We've rolled that out to the entire industry. So it's a self-service platform that every agency can use. It allows them to exploit our first-party data, which I think is very valuable. We've augmented it with some third-party data. We've created, clean rooms within that with a partnership with Infosum, so we can match advertisers' data with our data in a safe way. We've partnered with dunnhumby and we've partnered with Boots, so we've created a retail proposition. We're trying to build a sophisticated advertising ecosystem and make it easy to buy. I think lots of digital players have made it easy to buy. I think YouTube have done it. I think Facebook have done it, and I think that's something we're trying to do as well, is make TV easy to buy. So that's why we've invested in Planet V, and we genuinely hope that that's something that the TV industry can use. It's not something we specifically bought for ITV. There's an open invitation for other broadcasters to join, and we're hopeful that will happen over the course of the next year or so. So look, that's what we're trying to do to compete with the likes of Disney and Netflix. And I think the big challenge over the next few years is this convergence. As linear becomes more and more delivered via IP, which is what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. The job we've got to do, I guess we're in that awkward position in that we're going to have to play two roles for a while. We're going to have linear and addressable. But over the course of the next few years, the big job for us is to converge it, converge the ad tech and converge the sell, and I think that's the big job over the next few years.
No, and hopefully the launch goes well.
Thank you.
And big test, England, France, Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. We will go there later, but not now. You mentioned a few things here, which I'll use, and I'll transition because it's funny, and Phil and I were discussing this as we were prepping for this panel, and Phil was actually dumbfounded of how you've just referred to the digital platform, not dumbfounded, that's not true, but we said, we were discussing how the digital platforms, and you said this, made it easy to buy on their platforms. Before I go to you, I want to go to Natalie is that true? Is it much easier to buy on the digital? And don't worry, it's fine. He's not here. Pretend he's not here. Is it easier to buy on the digital platforms, than it is to buy on ITV today?
I think if you ask a digital person in my team, they'll say yes. If you ask the TV person, no, and the TV person will say it's easier to buy TV. So I think the challenge in all of this is, to Kelly's point just then, everybody is coming up with a better way to buy their platform. And the challenge for my teams is, how do we ensure that we are holistically thinking about all of them with different skill sets on every one? And I hope, everyone likes a peak. I hope we're at peak complexity as everyone's innovating, because what I need is a little bit more convergence actually in the way to do those things, particularly through DSPs and single points of buy. I know that's not coming yet. It's coming across certain parts, but every platform is simple in its own right, just not across them.
I think, historically, like we might have been told, particularly by agencies, that actually buying TV, certainly in the traditional sense, is relatively straightforward, right? And it's had a fairly sort of standardised way of doing it for many years that's worked very, very well. And then, we come in as a sort of disruptor with, new ways of doing things, and actually that's quite challenging, So I think probably that's where I've kind of, why I responded to you in that way. I think that, I suppose thinking about it though, what our platforms do allow for, whether it be AdWords or DV360, is kind of they've got that global scale, they're consistent in every market, and they do allow innovation, in the wider ecosystem, which I think is the thing that you're hoping for with ITV, X, based on what you just said, which is, there's lots of like businesses that have grown up around those products effectively that, have built businesses around them, independent agencies, there's many more buying points. And I think that actually has supported quite a lot of innovation in terms of how people can buy. We're able to leverage Google, smarts, as it were, across kind of like technology and audience, to support buys, not just in that sort of upper funnel where we're delivering incremental reach, which definitely is something that advertisers are looking for as audience, patterns kind of change, but also, as you move into the sort of mid funnel and the lower funnel, that's where we can use the sort of audience, capabilities that we have to kind of deliver those slightly more kind of like targeted campaigns. We've done a lot of work actually with Omnicom around building solutions that allow for customization of our content proposition as well on YouTube Select. So I think that's probably using technology in a smart way that helps to scale and create choice within the wider ecosystem, which I think is important.
I'll come back and sort of ask you perspective on GRP CPMs. I think I know your answer, Phil, but Evelyn, if we talk about data, which is core to what you just described, Sky's been innovating with data for, at least a decade. And, as we think about the next stage for TV, it's clearly targeted, addressable. Because you're based in Italy and in Germany, it's slightly, different. We've all known AdSmart here, very established brand. How have you gone about building or sort of expanding that brand and launching that in the various markets, if you want to tell us that for a second?
So look, I think, as you mentioned, AdSmart is obviously one of the key innovation areas for Sky because it lets you target those audiences. In the UK, actually, we're taking it even, to the next level, integrating more clean rooms, more data, making it more searchable, and, so that's something that we're doing in the UK. Obviously, in the other markets, we're still in the early stages. Both in Germany and Italy, we're following behind, I would say. It's been more complicated there, just because I think the way that the market views and buys advertising is also right. It's still predominantly linear. They are not looking for that targeted advertising product on TV yet. They're probably more used to it on digital. So it's still a lot about working with the agencies, working with the advertisers and educating the market, and then bringing the products that we have to those markets. But it's almost we're at step one of working. How do we bring those products to the markets? How do we convince people that there's value in them? And then we know we have them because they've worked in the UK. So it's kind of about taking that next step.
And Natalie, thanks, Evelyn. Natalie, when we talk sort of AdSmart/targeted TV and the propositions that are available today in digital, how do you feel the buyers are educated and your customers are sort of seeing the different opportunities now in the market today?
Well, I mean, first of all, I appreciate this is a global conference. Mine's a UK agency. We're a very sophisticated market. A lot of this is not new. So very educated, or at least I hope my teams are. And actually, we've been doing this for a while. And I think there's, I think to Kelly's point about the slightly two sides of it at the moment with linear and addressable, programmatic, whichever bit you're looking at. When it converges, it gets really exciting, but currently they do require slightly different skill sets. And actually, my TV buyers would say there's much more granularity in what they're doing with the BARB data through TV buying than some of the granularity on addressable. But I think it's a really sophisticated, exciting place to be in the UK at the moment. And because of that, actually, I've often stood up at digital conferences and said, we've got a massive talent problem, guys, and we're way behind this. Actually, our talent problem right now is in AV. That's where we're really struggling for people that are in high demand and possibly one of the most exciting parts of our industry.
There is, across the UK, there's some good kind of convergence going on, isn't there, with, the TV teams are getting kind of more digital,
Yep.
digital teams are getting, so I think
they
that is kind of like a positive thing, I think particularly we've seen, across the industry over the last year, I would say.
And learning from each other. I think that's the important bit earlier, back to the planning principles, is knowing when quick cover mass audiences are the right thing to do for a plan, and where to reach them and how to influence them, all the way through to really understanding a much more personalised campaign with DCO running through it. And actually, credit to Sky, the outcomes that then come off the back of it, which obviously ITV and YouTube are moving through as well. Yeah. And that's, just back to the Netflix point, I think it's really exciting. There's another new entrant into the market in a place where there are audiences that we can't always reach elsewhere, but they're at such an early stage of that. We don't even know the numbers yet, or the adoption. That's the question, the adoption of it. Elsewhere, we're looking at outcomes and much more sophisticated data usage.
If we talk about the simplicity aspect, and Kelly, you spoke about Planet V, which was introduced a couple of years ago, I believe. The approach there. We've heard, whether it's you or Reese, kind of come up here and describe the value proposition. It's meant to increase simplicity, meant to increase access to a linear, yet it has embraced programmatic. We've heard sort of, Netflix speak a lot about its, approach there. I think, Phil, you'll say that YouTube is a very programmatic platform in its approach. Do you think it's sorry to be controversial here, but do you think that's still the right moment for you in 22 and the approach that you've taken with Planet V?
Yeah, look, I think we looked at the programmatic world a few years ago, particularly around online display, and we felt there's lots, there's lots right about it, but there's lots wrong about it, and I think for us it was. We took the view that we wanted to, if we're going to get involved, we wanted to own and control that value chain, and that's why we've invested in Planet V, rightly or wrongly, but we think it's the right decision, and because I think the programmatic ecosystem for online display was built where there was more supply than demand, whereas I think we're in an ecosystem where we've got a scarce, very valuable premium product, and I think you have to build something slightly different for that, which is why we've invested in Planet V. And look, it's a platform that is the front door for addressable at the moment for ITV, but it will be the front door for ITV in the future as we converge everything, and we are. It's our shop window. It's where all of our kind of innovation sits, and it was great to hear Jeremy talk about an innovation around contextual advertising. We piloted that earlier on this year. We're using the metadata that we now have on all of our content to create contextual advertising. We piloted actually with the guys at Omnicom. So it was, I don't know, it felt proud to be British. That we've actually delivered something before the US. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's very true, and of course, Phil, just a moment, because this is the sort of a little bit, whilst we talk about TV here, you've had a very different approach on your end, on the YouTube side.
Well, I talked about the simplicity point earlier. I think one thing I wanted to pick up, just talking earlier about the Britishness of ITV, and I think actually something that we're quite proud of is the emerging sort of creator economy around YouTube here in the UK, which I think has some real scale. So we now have over 1,000 channels here in the UK with more than 1 million subscribers. So you start to get that sense of real scale, and obviously deep communities of interest within those channels as well. Now we just released some research we've done with Oxford Economics, which estimates that the contribution to UK GDP of the UK creator economy from YouTube is 1.4 billion pounds, and that we support around 40,000 jobs in the UK creative industry. So I think in the same way that this idea of like the future of television has to include the online platforms as well, because inevitably that's how consumers are consuming. When we look at the creative economy as well, the online platforms have got a really important role to play in terms of actually kind of supporting creativity in markets like the UK.
Yeah, it's very true, and I mean I think it goes back to what you were saying, Natalie. I mean we are here at a TV conference. Everything that we see on a screen is TV. It depends on how it's traded, and of course there's some complications. Evelyn, Jeremy spoke about how great it was for Netflix to now offer advertiser a global platform, right? Of course, YouTube is a very global platform. We are in a multitude of sort of local markets. Being across various markets, you have that. Do you think it is a strong demand today from buyers to have access to sort of a more global network?
So I think it depends, right? You have the buyers that are very local, even international companies that are buying very locally and very focused in their individual markets. But you do have some of the brands that are looking at it more global. Like we offer, both traditional, linear advertising, but also brand solution projects and other more innovative forms of advertising across the 3 Sky markets, but then also with the international team more broadly, and then obviously in collaboration with Comcast even more broadly. So there is a group of advertisers that's looking for the easy buy across, multiple countries. And then you've got the very local ones that want to buy locally and that don't want to do that. So I think as Sky, we're very fortunate because we get to do both, right? We're very, very local in the markets where we play. We've been there for a long time. And we actually also, people forget, but we're across all of the platforms, right? We've got short form content on our websites, we've got social channels, we've got obviously Now or Wow as it's branded, our streaming services, and the traditional pay TV. So we can offer that breadth, and we're trying to make it easier for advertisers to buy with tools like One Campaign. So it's a really great package that we can provide across.
Yeah, we're at the sort of bottom of our time here. I'm going to quickly go around in line, not around. And sort of ask you, what do we need to change when we sit here a year from now and we do the same panel? What do you hope to see sort of has changed from where we sit today? I'll finish with you, Natalie. I want to hear what everybody else has to say first. Phil, I'll start with you.
We didn't get a chance to talk about it in the panel, but I think measurement is absolutely critical to this industry. I think that when you think about the issues that we've just been talking about, the things that we're going to be talking about across the day, there's a real need from an advertiser perspective for better measurement that makes sense of this emerging kind of world. And I appreciate that it's challenging, but I think it's something that we've got to commit ourselves to. I think we are, one of the reasons why we're supportive of Project Origin has been because of its kind of, goal to sort of solve for this cross-media measurement piece. It'd be interesting to see their piece later on today, but that feels like the bit that is the most, the sort of, the kind of key thing that I think we've got to work on. Okay, one for measurement, 1 nil.
So I agree with the measurement point, and I think it's obviously great to see Netflix with Barb and collaboration around measurement and topics like Sea Flight. But I also think it's even more simplicity. I think we've talked about it a lot, but how do we make it easier for advertisers and agencies to buy the audiences? Because as we've all said, content consumption has never been as broad, there's never been as much great content for consumers to watch. So how do we help people find those audiences in an easy way? So simplicity.
Gary.
I'd probably say collaboration. For me, over the next 12 months, I hope we collaborate more. I think we've collaborated really well on Sea Flight as a TV industry and created a measurement system, got it into market, and I think that will evolve over the next 12 months. But I think we should compete really hard on content and collaborate around tech and data and measurements and all of those things. So for me, I hope in 12 months' time we could demonstrate more collaboration.
Fair enough. Natalie, closing words.
I was about to say, I can't believe we got through it without talking about Sea Flight, Barb and Origin.
Well, for next year.
Yeah. Just to that, I think, I just want to put out the point about content. I think it's, and the creator economy. It's so super important we don't lose sight of how brilliant we are as a country at creating amazing content. And I need premium content that draws in big audiences to get the right mass reach for my clients. So super, super important. The other part is we talk about measurement a lot when we talk about audiences, but all of my clients going into next year obviously facing huge challenges and are being very much challenged themselves on their budgets. And so I think the important bit while we're solving for audience measurement is that we don't lose sight of the effectiveness conversation. And it is, you know, if I'm thinking about traditional linear TV, it's always been exceptionally effective for a certain role. Obviously, inflation slightly pulls that down, but we have to get better at measuring the effectiveness of that, because otherwise those budgets will be challenged and they'll be pulled.
Great.
Couldn't agree more.
So we left a few topics on the table. I think we covered it quite a bit. I think we're done. Justin's coming back, and I want to thank you, my lovely panel, for your collaboration and participation today. Justin.